as it says so many times throughout these parshas, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded and Moshe and Aaron did. Exactly as HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them. And it says again in this week's parsha, in Parshas Boy, that whole of Klal Yisrael saw Moshe and Aaron did, and they followed. And Rashi feels the need to say, they did, Kein Asu, Af Moshe v'Aaron Asu. And even Moshe and Aaron did. And the commentators ask on Rashi, what is the need for the pasuk to go out and say even further that even Moshe and Aaron did, and that's how everyone else did? We know if Hashem did, Moshe and Aaron listened. That's what's been going on for already a few parshas. Why the need again? So Moshe Feinstein explains that when a person does an action, it has to be an action that's understood that it's clearly l'shem shamayim, that it's clearly for the sake of heaven, for the honor of God. Then when we do a mitzvah, we do a commandment, it's because we want to honor Hashem, we do it l'shma for its purpose. Not for other reasons involved, and perhaps never that this action should be misconstrued as something which is not pure. So much so, that there was an Amor in the Gemara, Rav, that when he would buy something, he wouldn't buy it on credit. He says, because when I purchase something on credit, even though we made up together, and both parties agree, it's totally honest and ethical. But perhaps someone might see it and say he's taking away meat without giving back money. How could someone as great as Rav do such a thing like that? So in order that no one should even come to a sneaking suspicion that perhaps maybe it was done in an improper manner, if it didn't have the pure intentions, he went ahead and forbade it and said that's an example of a desecration of God's name, of a chil Hashem. So says Moshe Feinstein, that's what the chiddush over here was. Rashi nuanced that Moshe and Aaron did it in a way that all of Klal Yisrael knew that they were only doing it for the sake of Hashem. There was not an ounce of their honor, not an ounce of their own covenant involved. It was all for the sake of their God. Everyone asks, especially today as we're wallowing in the throes of such suffering, communally, collectively, on a personal basis as well, each one individually. When is Mashiach going to come? There's a Sefer HaBris. The Vilna Gaon wrote about him that he was a Gaon. So we're talking about someone who the Vilna Gaon gave a haskama to. And in the Sefer HaBris it says, how do we get Mashiach to come? And he says the problem is because everything we do has a little bit of gaiva, a little bit of egocentrism, a little of self-centeredness. Why are we doing this? We're doing this for ourselves. He says even the people who are doing it necessarily for the purity of some sorts, it's so when they die, their names will be on some plaque and they'll have some great large funeral, some levaya. There's always something else involved. So he says, at least if you want to do it for the sake to bring Mashiach, start by just saying that this is for Hashem. Before we sit down and learn, this is for Hashem. Before we sit down and we do for Hashem. We do this for other people, for zechesed, for others, to take ourselves as much as possible out of the picture, out of the action which we are doing. That's how we bring Mashiach closer, by stripping away our ego, our I, and bringing forth more of K'vod Shemayim, more of fear of heaven and honor of God. Rabbi Victor Miller, when he was dying, so he knew already he was on his last few days. And in his last Ma'ariv, in his last Shemoneh Esrei, as his own grandson who was there testifies, in his last Ma'ariv, he davened for a half an hour Shemoneh Esrei. And he noticed that he spent about 15 minutes on the bracha of V'lam al Shinim. Now you would think V'lam al Shinim talks about how Rishayim, how the evil should be eradicated from this world. And the question is, for Victor Miller knew he was going, why didn't he daven for Rifa'enu? Heal us. Give us a refuah shalema. Let us daven. But the answer is he was someone who perfected himself, that he lived for other people. And if he realized that his time was going, He said he's going to spend the last mirav of his life, or one of the last prayers of his life, for Klal Yisrael. So that this tefillah should add on to those tefillahs, those prayers of Klal Yisrael, that the evil should be eradicated and God's honor should be brought down to this world. The more we could focus on those actions, instead of looking into our own suffering, but rather think about how we could do for others, and every action we do thinking about other people, and more importantly thinking about Hashem's honor, people will see from the actions themselves that it's lishma, it's the kavod. And then we could testify, as Rashi says about Moshe and Aaron, that it will be said about ourselves, that when we do our actions, it will be apparent to all that it's only for Kvod Shemayim, it's only for the fear of heaven, and nothing of ourselves mixed in as well. Have a wonderful Shabbos.